So we met through Professor Spence, didn't we?
Yes.
And there was that kind of, I think what brought us together was this kind of interest in cross-disciplinary collaboration and looking at how that creativity that you're talking about can be drawn from kind of other sources as well. So it's not just about working with other product designers, it's about working with psychologists and chefs and people from other disciplines that has informed your work. What is it that got you interested in that kind of sensory side? Or is that a kind of is that kind of inherent when you're a designer, that that's something that you're interested in?
Well, I think the ability to develop your experiences come from, and your mental thought process comes from what you do and what you experience in life. So, as we started to supply more and more creative chefs, really looking at the high-end market or the fine dining market.
Sure.
Fortunate enough to go and eat at many of these places, I then realized that this tool they're using for this remarkable dish doesn't complement, is not part of the experience. This could be improved. There's room for improvement here. So
because crockery had been evolving for quite a while at that point, right?
Right.
Like as in this idea of, what the plateware serves as the kind of, artist's kind of
blank canvas.
Blank canvas, and we kind of decorate it. We think about all these ways of making the food look delicious and more appetizing and more aesthetically well presented. But I guess you found that the actual implements that we were then using weren't.
And so from chef's art on the plate, as well as being technical with dealing with taste of bittersweet, sour, umami, salty. You basically, they've got the technical content in the food, then they've created the art, and then from the plate, it has to arrive in your mouth. Yeah. And that's where I come in. So Studio William, we design these sort of fun, additional, extra.
And that's a really intimate
pieces.
part of the experience as well, because that's the thing that's actually taking it from the plate into your mouth. It's the part of the kind of tableware that's actually coming into really kind of a very sensitive part of or cavity, and that's really interesting because how it because we know that different metals can alter how you perceive the flavor, and I think Professor Spencer had done some really interesting research on that, looking at different metal spoons, and looking at the influence that could have on your perception of things like saltiness or sweetness, or how it affected the overall flavor.
Like caviar with a horn or a wood spoon, caviar is affected by metals.
Right, there you go, exactly. So then I think that's kind of, we know that can affect it, but the design, I guess, as well is really interesting because the mouthfeel, the texture, the way the implement kind of interacts with your mouth as your kind of,
So we've been experimenting with some textures. So obviously you have a mirror polished traditional stainless steel finish on cutlery.
Yeah.
We do a brushed satin finish, which is a favorite of mine, as well as being aesthetic. You have that extra bit of texture, which you can feel on your tongue and on your lips. So, as it goes into your mouth, your lips are very sensitive, and your tongue can pick up on the satin texture as well. And then we've sort of taken it a step further. So imagining a dessert with a crunchy and a smooth and a sweet and a sour level created by chef, and it's looking beautiful on the plate. And we then thought, well, cutlery, let's introduce a textured spoon. So there's a texture on the spoon bowl. I'm just picking up the spoon bowl.
Yeah, by the way, we have some beautiful cutlery displayed out here. But yeah, that's really cool.
So we've got 4 spoons. The spoons have different textures in the bowl.
Okay.
So as the customer is of the restaurants going through with the spoon into the dessert, they're picking up the food stuff on the bowl, they deliver it into their mouth, and as the bottom of the tongue and the lips, they will engage with this texture as you...
and those really sensitive parts of your kind of mouth where you've got all those nerve endings and all that is kind of being stimulated not only by the food textures, why the texture's in your cutlery.
And we don't really think about that very often, I think.
I don't think anybody has been thinking about that. I don't think it's kind of a common. You see very few people who are looking at that kind of side of it and looking at the importance, because we know things like eating with your hands in certain cultures, they believe it makes food taste better in some way. We know that, the weight of cutlery, that influences people's perception of value and stuff like that. But I think when it comes to texture and people actually looking at how cutlery, how you engage with those implements, I don't think enough people are really giving thought to that.
And we all know daily things like a kiss. You know how sensitive your lips are.
Sure.
So it's lovely that cutlery can take a sort of participation in that, or we can make a piece of cutlery which engages some emotion, which engages us in thinking about what we're doing with an everyday item.
Yeah.
Cutlery for me is interesting. Our parents gave us a knife, fork, and spoon when we were very small, and then we sort of started this social etiquette journey of elbows off the table when we're eating, and maybe the parents starting first, and so the very utilitarian, functional tools, mainly derived by a handle and a head.
Yeah.
And we in the West we have knife, fork, and spoon.
Yeah.
And in the Asia Pacific East we've got chopsticks.
Yeah.
And our parents gave us these tools. We don't really consider today, amongst all the evolving things around our lives, the evolution of technology and smartphones and convenience activities. Sure. It's sort of very much like laces on shoes. They're sort of things we just have and we take for granted, and
Sure.
we don't often question. So I really like that I can design some extra pieces which can add sort of an experience, make people think about things.
And that's fascinating to think that if you go back, I don't know, maybe back to Victorian times, they had huge cutlery selections, right? They had a spoon or fork or knife for all sorts of different there'd be things for shellfish, there'd be, as you said, caviar kind of implements, there'd be a different kind of range of knives and
fish knives
forks,
and forks.
And we've still got a few of those kind of things hanging around. I mean, but why is it that we went from having this huge, extensive range of cutlery that was for the haves rather than the have-nots, admittedly, but it kind of all just now has come down to kind of, as you said, a knife, fork, and spoon, and there's a few kind of variations out there, but why have we gone from kind of feeling that we required such a wide range of cutlery to only kind of coming down to these?
I think it's a cultural thing. It's an occasion, and dining can be an occasion, and it can be a convenience. So as we go for a quick lunch, it's something that we need to do for fulfilling our human need. We need some food in us. But if we were to meet up for dinner and we make a small journey somewhere and we're meeting up at a certain time, and that might be an occasion. Mm-hmm. And an occasion is a great time to take things on with a bit of theatre, a bit of drama, make it memorable. So I think there was a sense of grandeur brought about by having extended cutlery lines where you have fish knives and forks and different sized cutlery, different shaped heads to suit different functional needs.
Yeah.
And some of them were justified, escargot and these things need specific size tools to be able to use them. But the change for us today is that we've moved into different proportions. So
that's an interesting point.
There's an area where the amount of food we can eat can be of a better quality, a smaller amount, 3 or 4, 5 delicious, amazing,
so more delicate kind of implements
too. Moments, and we want to have 3 or 4 or 5 of these courses, and therefore it's not a sort of starter and a main course, which is a sort of a la carte normal restaurant dining experience. Yeah. We're into little taster menus, and when you've got a smaller amount of food, but it's crafted and much more refined, the plate size tends to reduce. So therefore,
Yeah.
From my perspective as a cutlery designer, the size of the cutlery is also now needing to change. So we have smaller cutlery to suit vessels. So this is what I would kind of call an appetizer fork. So
Lovely.
it's much smaller than a side fork, and when the plates sort of 4 or 5 inches maybe, and the food stuff on the plate from chef is small and great quality. Having a big knife and fork is the cutlery's
totally.
It's gone out of scale.
And it's clumsy as well, and it's